Praise the Lord, everybody. Welcome to the Front Runner Podcast. I am your host, Isaiah Marshall. Today on the podcast, we have a front runner joining us, Bryan DeCuir. This is part one of a two-part discussion that I'll be having with Bryan as we discuss business, as he opens up about his challenging journey of becoming an attorney and lessons that he learned after experiencing failure after failure that I believe will help us. Here is Front Runner, episode 3. Praise the Lord. My name is Isaiah Marshall, and you are listening to Front Runner, my podcast, where I will be interviewing friends who are front runners, the underdogs who dare to take risks, who bet on themselves, who run their own race, who run to win. They lead their lives from the front, and as they sang in track and field, they leave it all on the track. Let's go. Praise the Lord. Welcome to the Front Runner Podcast. My name is Isaiah Marshall, and we have a very, very special guest today, my brother, Bryan DeCuir, and I've been knowing him for years, but I know him, and I want you all to get to know him, and I know that you all will be blessed by this discussion. Bryan, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Isaiah. How are you?
I'm doing good, Can't complain. Man, I'm happy to have you and just honored and just looking forward to our discussion, for real.
Yeah, me too.
So I know who you are, and I know we've been knowing each other for years.
Yeah,
through the Toastmasters Club, same Toastmasters Club, but our listeners don't know who you are. So, who is Bryan DeCuir? And I guess we'll lead up to what you do. And so,
yeah, it's such a broad question, man. Who is Bryan DeCuir? Well, I guess I'll just start with the basic stuff. I'm an attorney. I'm a financial advisor, husband, father, and I feel like a sort of a lifelong learner. I try to really keep in with self-improvement. Try to get constantly get better a little bit. I sort of like that 1% rule of keeping going forward and getting a little bit better throughout your whole life. You don't need to stop once you get done with school or once you get done with it. It's a lifelong process to continue down that path. And, so I help my clients manage their finances. I help them with their estate planning. So I do a lot of the wills and trusts and things like that. It's really good. I find that I have a very good client relationship where I get to, really people come into my office with a problem or with something that they're worried about, and they're asking me to help them so that they don't have to worry anymore. And I jokingly tell people part of my job is helping others sleep better at night. Yeah. It really is. If I do tell people, hey, if you're waking up in a cold sweat about your finances or about your estate plan, then I'm not doing my job right. And so you need to give me a call and you need to say, hey, I've just been worried about that. What can you tell me to put me at ease? So I find that's sort of how I live my life. I like to help people. I'm on the board for Toastmasters, nonprofit organization. I'm also the band booster president of my son's high school band boosters. And so I just feel like I'm here to be of service to people. Wow. And so that's sort of who Bryan DeCuir is, I guess.
Now, you mentioned you're on the board. Is this like the national board or like?
No, not for Toastmasters. No, I'm talking about the board for our club.
Oh,
for Toastmasters. Yeah.
Oh man, that's
no. No, they haven't tapped me to do that, and that's a big job, though. I've heard that.
Imagine.
A lot of people, a lot of stuff to do there. Big organization.
Yes,
so
sir. Now you're a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
So why is that important to you? Like just the constant learning and improving yourself. Like,
it's interesting to me. I feel like if I didn't do those things, I just feel like I would be stagnating. I have a natural curiosity about things, about life, and about, I'm a big studier of the human condition. I really somewhat enjoy movies that are, that sort of portray that, because I feel like we're all going through this experience. And sometimes I feel like some people might feel isolated. They feel like they're going through this experience by themselves, but we're all going through this experience in this human body that we're in.
Yes, sir.
And I feel like that's part of it for me, is I'm just curious about about those things. But then secondly, also, as I said, I really like to be of service to people. So I like to help people find answers. I like to put people at ease. I like to, basically help people with, the types of things that you would need, like get answers for people, if that makes sense.
Yes, sir.
And not that I have all the right answers. I certainly don't. The more that I learn, the more I realize I don't know.
Yeah.
But I will say that people really appreciate it when you're saying, "Hey, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll get you the answer to that." And they have at least a little amount of trust and say, "Yeah, I feel like Bryan is going to not steer me wrong." And so yeah, it's been an honor.
That's the beauty of the journey of learning. It's like oftentimes we talk about taking vacations. I'm like, man, if you read a good book, that's like taking a vacation, because you enter into a space you've never been before. And it's like, man, just the journey of learning about new things and then being able to, teach others.
Right. Exactly.
And what you're learning. That's good.
Well, you'd be surprised where you learn things. Every once in a while you read a good book and you think, oh, this is just like, I had this experience recently where I typically am a nonfiction reader.
Okay.
I typically will read self-help books and self-improvement and motivational books and things like that. Just read, I don't know if you know David Goggins' book, but he's a Navy SEAL. I will warn people, he uses some real salty language in that book because he's a Navy SEAL. But I will say he has a very motivational story.
Wow.
And not only for the fact that he got himself in shape and became a Navy SEAL, but he also, he basically is just helping people to improve themselves in one way or the other, and also deal with the mental aspect of self-improvement, which is a lot of times the biggest thing. I mean, your brain's standing in your way of moving forward because it keeps telling you can't do it. It keeps telling you, that you don't have it in you, that you don't have what it takes.
Yes, sir.
And his story is basically a story of, yes, you do. You just need to tell yourself that.
Yes, sir.
And so, the interesting thing I was going to say is, I usually read nonfiction, but I've read a couple of fiction books and I've gleaned some great lessons from stories that are fictional stories.
Wow.
And it was one of those things that it was almost a little bit, I don't want to say it blew my mind, but it was almost a little bit like eye-opening, because I always thought, oh, reading nonfiction, that's just like reading some stories. Like, it's just for fun. You don't get anything out of that. It's just reading a story that somebody else made up.
Yes, sir.
And, you read something and you go, you know what? That actually applies to my life. What that character went through in that book applies to my life and my struggle or something else that you're going through.
Yes, sir.
And so interesting, concept, at least.
Yeah, I can relate. I listen mostly to nonfiction books as well. But the books that I'm more drawn to in terms of nonfiction is reading autobiographies or biographies about interesting people.
Yeah.
Who've overcome, certain obstacles in their lives.
Yes.
And so like a lot of what I read is about the underdog, about this whole concept where the odds was against someone. And then you read and you watch how they overcame those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when you think about that and you think about, just our relationship, like for me personally, like I love a good underdog story because I see myself as an underdog. Not that I see myself as an underdog, but this whole notion of being considered an underdog.
Yeah.
And so, as you know, this podcast is called Front Runner.
Sure.
And so this is a concept from track and field. So I had the privilege and honor of running track and field for probably about 15 years of my life. And I would consider myself to be a front runner. So I think it's just a great picture and an analogy of life. And the front runner in track and field is often that person who is not expected to win. They're the underdog.
Okay.
Now, for me personally, I believe and I feel like that front runner is a person who was willing to take risks. That individual who bet on themselves. Who just was determined to run their own race and to run that race to win. One of my favorite track and field athletes is Steve Prefontaine. You may have heard of him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, arguably one of the greatest track and field athletes of all time. But he said this quote. He said, "I don't want to win unless I know I've done my best. And the only way I know to do that is to run out in front until I have nothing left."
Yeah.
So when you think about this whole concept of front runner and the way I framed it and the way I painted the picture, would you consider yourself to be a front runner?
Yeah, I that's an interesting question, and I love the concept. By the way, that's here's what I'll say. When I started my journey of trying to get into being an attorney, and actually I didn't even realize or intend to become a financial advisor. I just sort of fell into that career because it went hand in hand with my other pursuits that I wanted to do legally. But it's interesting. I think when I first got into my career, I didn't think of myself as a front runner. I think that and to some extent, probably a little bit now, I still don't.
Okay.
But it's a little tiny bit, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because now I've been doing this for about 18 years now.
Yes, sir.
Both of these careers, if you will. And what I realized throughout the time is that I've been taking risks on myself the whole time.
Wow.
Is that I've been doing those things. I didn't realize that I was doing them at the time. But now looking back, it's like, hey, I stepped out and became a business owner. I thought when I went to law school, I thought I'm going to go work for a law firm. I'm going to be just one of the cogs in the gears there and work for the law firm, try to make partner at a law firm, stick it out there.
Yes, sir.
Not own the law firm, not start a law firm, not do it myself.
Yes, sir.
But be one of the people that's sort of like, I'll work my way up with some, sweat equity and other things like that. And turns out that, back in 2006, my business partner and I, when we went independent and I formed my own law firm, I, without realizing it, was taking a risk on myself. Because as you know, I mean, running your own business and doing things by yourself, that's not the easy path.
Man, yeah.
It's not. I thought it was. I thought, set your own schedule, be your own boss. Everybody talks about it, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's not an easy path. Nah. And I think that that's where. So in retrospect, I think that I've been a front runner my whole career.
Wow.
But I didn't realize it at the time.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
And so but here's the other thing I'll say about it, Isaiah, is that no one's going to get around taking a risk on themselves at some point.
Yeah.
So there's no way around that in life.
Wow.
Because think about everything you're doing. I mean, like you're married to a lovely woman. You have beautiful children.
Yes, sir. You
took a risk with that. You took a risk with picking someone, asking, hey, she could have said, no, I don't want to marry you.
Said no, right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You took a risk right there. When you wrote your book,
yes,
you
sir.
took a risk. I mean,
For
you're putting yourself out there. You're saying, hey, here's my thoughts. Here's my things. Here's my inner workings for you to tear apart, really,
yes,
for
sir.
people to look at and critique and say, oh, I don't agree with that. I agree with that. I sort of agree with it. So you took a risk on yourself doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even if you don't do any of those things, though, you're going to have to go to a job interview. You're going to have to go out on a date. You're going to have to, there's all kinds of things you're going to have to do. You're going to have to say, okay, here's who I am. And this is what's going to happen right now.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to present that to the world. And I'm going to see what happens.
Man, there's some vulnerability in that, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Like, especially being a creative. And as you mentioned, when I wrote that book, it's like, man, it's like exposing yourself. And then it's like you putting this stuff out there, you putting this work out there. And, after it's out there, it's for the listener or the reader to kind of interpret and to see if they rock with it or different things like that. So it's a vulnerability that's attached to that for sure.
Yeah.
Of rejection.
Yeah.
Those negative, or we perceive as negative feelings like rejection, which, even in rejection that can build some, resiliency and different things like that. But no one ever, I've never heard anyone say, man, I love being rejected.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I'll say the fortunate or unfortunate part about this whole thing is that you got to get comfortable with that. Dude. I mean, not everybody wants me to be their attorney. Not everybody wants me to, and you know what? I'm going to say this out loud, and we're recording right now. Not everybody likes Bryan DeCuir, right? No, not everybody's going to do that. And I have to be okay with that. Yes, I have to be okay with the fact that, that maybe I'm not for everyone. I'm certainly not somebody who's abrasive or who's going to create some kind of conflict. Yes, but at the same time, that took me a long time to realize that, it took me a long time to say, like, that's part of the process, and to be okay with, hey, you know what, here's who I am, and I'm going to put that out to the world and take it or leave it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so, and I know you do the same, you know what I mean? You when you're preaching, when you're speaking, when you're presenting to people, all of those things, you have to just say, here's who the genuine Isaiah is. Mm-hmm. And I know that's not for everyone, but I know that for some of you guys, I know I'm speaking the truth on a lot of levels. And so, like it or not, that's what I'm telling you.
Yeah. And this is me,
Yeah.
Where I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned about, the risk in starting your own law firm and different things like that. But I'm wondering, because, I know, some of your story.
Yeah.
Let's think about and rewind a little bit. So
sure.
Do you think your journey through law school and in some of the things you experienced there kind of helped you and prepare you for that time when you had to take that risk in starting your business?
Yeah, I would say in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. I feel like, and I'll just, I guess, fill the audience in a little bit on my story. For those of you who don't know, in order to be an attorney, you have to pass the bar exam, right? And these are of varying lengths depending on which state you're in. But at the time I lived in California, it's a 3-day, 18-hour long exam. So it is not, it's the hardest exam I've ever taken in my life by far. And it has multi-facets. It's multifaceted. It has, it sort of quizzes you from all different angles and all different directions. And, so when I graduated law school, I thought, because I graduated, I've got the degree in my hand, I was now equipped to take the bar exam.
Yes, sir.
And well, I hit a roadblock. For actually, really, I don't want to say the first time in my life, but I'll say this was probably the toughest thing I had to do. So I took the exam after I graduated law school, and also to fill the audience in, the way that it works is you study for about 2 to 3 months before you take this exam. You take the exam, and then you have to wait another 2 to 3 months for your results. So you're just in limbo.
Yes,
so
sir.
you got to think, for taking the exam once, by the time you study and get your results, that's a 6-month patch of your life.
Wow.
And for that last 3 months, you're just in limbo. You're just working whatever job you were working, doing your normal everyday life, and going, well, I hope and I pray that I'm going to pass this exam so that I can move on in my career. Well, first time I get the results back, I didn't pass.
Man, so let's pause there for a moment.
Yeah.
So there's that anxiety of studying and then taking the test, and then there's that anxiety and waiting for your results. Then you get the results, and you didn't pass. Like, what was your feelings at that time? Like, how were you feeling? Like,
really tough. Yeah, it's really tough because there's so much energy that you put into that. There's so much. It's almost like, really, it's sort of like what you're talking about with Prefontaine. Like when you're competing, you're it's like to leave everything on the field, just like he said. It's like leave everything out there, and so you prepare as best as you think you can in order to accomplish your goal.
Yes, sir.
And then you'd go and you do the game, you play the game, you take the test, you do whatever, and you leave it all on the field, right? And then to come back at the end, I mean, the anguish of going, I put all that time and energy in, and it I didn't accomplish my goal.
Wow.
So mentally it becomes really tough, because now you have to immediately start studying again. You've already started studying. I probably well, I won't spoil the ending of this story, but but I probably, over my course of studying for the bar exam, I probably answered 10,000 multiple choice questions.
Wow.
So you have to immediately start studying. You have to immediately start studying material that you've already studied. And then you also have to recognize that whatever you did last time didn't get your goal.
Mm-hmm.
So now what do I need to tweak? What do I need to do differently? How do I need to readjust so that I will get that goal? And that becomes a real mental challenge, it's just like anything else. It's like, I mean, if you want to talk athletics, I mean, they got to change their training. How do you train? I got to train differently now.
Yes, sir.
Because I didn't win the race. I didn't accomplish my goal. And so,
wow.
And that on top of, it's sort of a big thing that you're trying to pass the bar exam. So your whole family knows when those scores coming in. All your friends and family,
man, yeah,
everybody that you went to law school with took that exam the same day, and they're getting their results exactly the same time you are.
Wow.
And your whole family is there. And granted, my family, very supportive. Everybody was rooting for me.
Yeah.
Everybody else thought that I was like, yeah, Bryan, he's got what it takes. He's putting the time in. He's doing everything. And
yes, sir.
For whatever reason, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so then you have to go back and you have to tell everyone. I mean, it's the equivalent of, in athletic terms, people watching the race and just in real time saying, you didn't do it.
Saw you not win or PR or whatever.
Exactly.
You didn't have your best game.
Right. Exactly. And so that, honestly, I'll be honest. The first time I took the exam and that happened, it takes a couple days to get your mind back right again. I mean, it's a sort of an emotional blow where you're like, you thought you did everything you needed to do, and apparently that wasn't it. Mm. So, but I'm trying to remember the speaker. I heard a motivational speaker who's an ex-NBA player.
Okay.
And great guy, loved the way he speak. But one of the things he talked about was when he has a setback, when something like that happened, he was a believer. So he basically said, hey, I allow myself to cry. And his joke was, he's like, I get my stereo out, I put my tape in, I play my sad music, and I cry. But he said, I only allow myself to cry for 3 days. And he said, basically the reference being Jesus, coming back. And so, so I feel like that's something that I learned is, it's okay to be sad or not, really satisfied with setbacks like that.
Yeah.
But where it becomes dangerous is if you let that get you down. If you have some kind of permanent change where you say, you know what, I'm not gonna do it.
You just let that challenge and that little setback keep you from pursuing what it is you're trying to pursue.
That's right.
Just give up all together.
That's right. Yeah.
We know you ain't do that. So
well, yeah. I guess to finish the story, I ended up taking the bar exam in California 4 more times. And same result. I took multiple courses. I changed my training every time. And I'm using training as a, obviously not in the broad sense there, but I changed my curriculum. I changed everything that I thought I could change to try to accomplish that goal. And I couldn't do it. And I thought, my first thought was, well, I guess God doesn't want me to be a lawyer. I guess that's what it is. Like, I feel like maybe that's just not my lot in life. I went to law school, and maybe I'm just not going to be able to practice law. But then, yeah, and that was tough. Those were the thoughts that I was having. I guess that's what's going to happen here. And ultimately, at the time, my wife was pregnant with our first child, and we were looking for a place to go outside of Los Angeles. Los Angeles is just too crowded, not a great place to raise kids, in my opinion. Sorry if anybody's listening from LA, but it's a big metropolitan city with a lot of people there. And it's expensive to live there. And there were all kinds of reasons why we wanted to get out, but we had ties to Nashville and decided to move. And at the same time, I had my business partner, who I went to law school with. He didn't end up finishing law school, but basically, he said, well, if you came out here and passed the bar, maybe we could go into business together.
Wow.
And so I came out and I passed the bar on the first try in Tennessee.
After doing it that many times in California, you came here and you passed it. The first time. Wow.
That's right,
man. That's amazing.
and that's the thing that I was trying. The last part of that is, I think one of the lessons that I learned from that is that, with all the thoughts in my head of like, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to be a lawyer. It's like, well, no, actually, what God and the universe was telling me is you're just not supposed to be a lawyer in California. Mm-hmm. So now 18 years later, I've been practicing law here and I love it. I love living in Middle Tennessee. I love, my house. I think I'm exactly in the right place where I was supposed to be. But I will say that it took going through those things, and it took not giving up. Because if I had given up on the first try, then my whole course trajectory might have changed. And so that's
the front runner. Like, you continue to take risks, even though the odds were against you. You know what I mean? But you continue to take risks. You continue to bet on yourself. Now, I imagine, throughout that process, as you said, there was challenges, there were, mentally and different things like that. But like, what do you think kind of sustained you and helped you just continue to take that leap? Even though you kept taking the risk of taking the bar, and then you didn't pass, but then it's like, what was it that just continued that was in you that was just like, man, I'm gonna just continue to take the leap and bet on myself.
I think maybe buried inside me somewhere there's a little bit of stubbornness, like where I'm just like, I can't accept certain things. I may not process it the same as somebody who's a really, really competitive person. I think it's sort of buried in me a little bit.
Okay.
But I think I'm unsettled by the fact that I maybe feel like I should be able to get this, and I should be able to pass this. And I see, again, going back to that thing, it's like, hey, as I see, the first, second, third, fourth time I took it, I'm seeing my friends all pass. They're like slowly. Some of them passed the first try, some of them passed the second try, and there's no shame in not passing the bar in California after multiple times. It's a very difficult exam, and they grade it in a very difficult way. But like I said, I think I was unsettled by that fact, and I also had the desire. I knew that I wanted to be an attorney, probably in middle school.
Wow.
And I think that stuck with me a little bit, in that I just couldn't give that up. I couldn't see myself doing anything else. Like I said, I didn't intend to be a financial advisor. Mm-hmm. I never saw myself as a financial advisor.
Yeah.
But logically, it made sense when I got to the point where it was like, hey, there's this opportunity for you to be a financial advisor. Of course, got to take a couple more tests and pass those. But ultimately, I felt like that was just something that, I needed to see through to the end, Man,
that's powerful, man. And I imagine like that why.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just helped you sustain to make it to that finish line. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So you talked about the challenges, you talked about all of those things, but like, were there any lessons that you learned throughout that process that, that could be helpful for us? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think, I think like the old saying goes, it's like, hey, it's okay to get knocked down. Like the best person gets knocked down 7 times, but they get up 8.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like, that's part of it. I also feel like, making sure that and it's a really hard thing to do, but you have to believe in yourself.
Mm.
And I know look, I know you and I both have supportive people around us,
Yes, sir.
and people that want us to improve and want us to succeed and all of these things. Right. But ultimately, none of that matters unless you believe in yourself.
Yeah.
And, I think obviously faith is a component of that as well.
Yes, sir.
Is just basically, looking to a higher power and saying, hey, I can't handle all this myself.
Yes, sir.
And so, so I feel like continuing down a path like that and recognizing that it's all part of the process. And I'll go back to our Toastmasters journey a little bit. What I tell people when I mentor people in Toastmasters about public speaking, and I know you're an experienced public speaker, like you speak in front of gigantic groups.
You trying to make me blush.
But what I tell people is, that nervousness, that all that stuff that happens right before you go on stage or as you're preparing, and somebody calls you and says, hey, Isaiah, I want you to make this presentation to this group of people. Like that never really goes away, but at some point you recognize it as a normal part of the process. Yeah. At some point you realize, hey, you know what? I'm just going to be nervous when I'm about to go make a presentation, even if it's something that I present all the time or a subject that I'm very familiar with and able to talk about easily. Yeah. And so putting that on my experience is part of our life. Our normal experience in our life is failing. I mean, I really think that, I don't want to say you focus on failure, but the sooner that you can realize that failure is a normal part of the process for anything, then the better you're going to be off. The better off you're going to be, just because you're going to be able to say, hey, okay, that was a setback. All right, now let's recalibrate. Yes, let's figure out what needs to be done. And maybe you take your 3 days and you sob and you put your sad music on and you do all those things. Yeah. But after that, you get up and you say, hey, okay, I didn't get what I wanted. I didn't get what I thought I wanted. And I think, again, on top of this whole thing is listening to God a little bit, is listening to that, am I so focused on the path that I want that I'm neglecting and I'm not listening to the fact that there's this other path that's parallel to it that really is just as good. There's no good or bad to it, but it's a different path that you don't see yourself on. Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that's something that you need to explore.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean,
there's a scripture. It says that, man makes the plan, but God orders our steps. And it's like recognizing that what we have in our hearts and what we desire to do, it may not be what God is calling us to do.
That's right.
He may be shifting us in ordering our steps in a different direction, but it's all that process, that journey of failing and learning, and these setbacks. Those things make us stronger throughout that journey. So when we get to where we're going, we may have, experienced some bumps and bruises along the way, but man, those things help us be resilient and persevere.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's good. Hey, we are going to stop our discussion right here, and we will pick it up with a part 2 next time. But I want you to pause. And I would encourage you to just process everything that you heard today about his story, Bryan DeCuir's story, about his failure, his perseverance, and how he did not allow his failure to stop him from reaching that finish line, that goal that he had in mind. Look, I look forward to part 2 of our discussion as we dive even deeper to be encouraged, to be challenged, and to be empowered. follow the Front Runner Podcast and share with a friend. Also, follow me on Instagram at the Isaiah Marshall. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, which can be found in the show notes. And while you are at it, be sure to check out all of my released spoken word poetry projects anywhere you stream music. Thank you for supporting my creative journey. This is the Front Runner Podcast. Until next time, let's go.
I'm out front running, underdog, but I stay underdog. I take my risks, that's why I beat the odds, Front running, I'm out front running, I'm out front running. I run and win, that's why I run with him, no looking back. I leave it on the track.